Okay, so retirement, not exactly the most uh, captivating topic for a deep dive, is it?
Mm.
But whether we like it or not, it's something that, affects us all. And figuring out how it all works or how it's maybe kind of stopped working
Yeah.
is super important, right?
You're telling me.
We're taking a deep dive today into this article called Who Killed America's Retirement? And let me tell you, it doesn't paint a very pretty picture. We're talking about over half of young Americans, like literally having nothing saved for retirement.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? And nationally, it's like, what, a full 50% with zero retirement savings?
It's a pretty staggering statistic.
It really makes you think, like, how on earth did we get to this point?
Yeah.
And more importantly, what does it mean, for us? What does it mean for everyone out there?
Right.
To really understand this whole mess, we got to go back in time, way back, like before 401ks even existed. Imagine a world like before Social Security was even a thing.
It was a completely different ballgame back then. If you couldn't work, well, you were pretty much stuck relying on charity. Or even worse, the poorhouse.
Yikes. That's not exactly the retirement dream, is it?
Not quite.
So when Social Security finally arrived in 1935, it was like this huge game changer. Suddenly, there was this safety net, a guaranteed income, like for life after you've put in all those years of work. But here's the thing, and this is where it gets interesting. Social Security was never intended to be the only source of income for people in retirement.
Right, exactly. Think of it like a three-legged stool, okay? You've got Social Security as one leg, then you've got personal savings as another leg, and then the third leg is those employer-sponsored benefits, like pensions, for example.
Ah, pensions. Those were the
Yeah.
days, right? Back when your company basically took care of your retirement for you.
Well, they certainly provided a sense of security for many. With a pension or defined benefit plan, as they're formally known, you are promised a certain amount of money every month, for the rest of your life after you retired. And the best part, it was completely funded by the employer, so you didn't have to worry about managing your own investments or anything like that.
So it's like a guaranteed delivery service for your retirement income. You knew exactly what you'd be getting each month, no matter what.
That's a great way to put it. And for a long time, that was the norm. Back in 1970, more than half of all full-time workers were covered by pensions, especially in those big unionized industries like manufacturing. The article even mentions this guy Shercraft, a third-generation auto worker. His dad had a pension, and it allowed him to retire comfortably. Healthcare, financial stability, the whole nine yards. He was able to, pass that legacy down to his family.
That's a really powerful example of, the kind of security that pensions used to offer. Makes you wonder, like, why did they ever go away? So what happened? Why'd companies start ditching pensions?
Well, the story you hear a lot is that they just became too expensive to maintain. Companies like Ford, for example, they started phasing them out in the early 2000s, and instead they switched over to 401k plans. This shift, which happened across a lot of industries, essentially meant that companies were moving the financial risk from themselves, onto their employees.
So instead of that guaranteed delivery service we talked about, they're now left to figure out their own retirement route with all the potential bumps in the road that come with that.
Right. And with 401ks, it's on you, the employee, to save and to invest wisely. And that comes with a whole new set of challenges.
So let's break down those challenges. Like, what are the biggest downsides of those 401ks compared to, those cushy pensions we were talking about?
Well, one of the biggest issues is how much they rely on the stock market. Your retirement savings, they're directly tied to how well the market's doing, which, as we all know, can be pretty unpredictable. Unlike the guaranteed income you get with a pension, your 401k balance, it can go up and down like a roller coaster. So it's really hard to know for sure how much you'll actually have when you retire.
So it's kind of like you're gambling with your retirement.
In a way, yeah, you're basically betting that the market's going to do well over the long haul. And that's not even taking into account the fact that a lot of people aren't even using them. The article says that only about 49% of eligible workers are actually contributing to their 401k plans.
Wow, less than half. That's kind of surprising. Why do you think that is?
I think for a lot of people, it just comes down to affordability. With the cost of living going up all the time and wages staying pretty much the same, it's tough for people to find the extra money to save. And even if you can manage to contribute, there's another layer of complexity you got to deal with, all those hidden fees.
Oh yeah, the fine print, everyone's favorite part, right?
Right. And those fees can really eat into your returns over time. Administrative costs, management fees, they're often buried deep in those plan documents, and they can chip away at your savings without you even realizing it.
That's a pretty far cry from those pension funds, which were professionally managed and usually had lower costs, right? Because
Mm.
they pooled money from like a whole bunch of different workers. It almost feels like the system is like designed to make planning for retirement harder than it needs to be.
It does raise some questions about, whether the system is really working in the best interest of the average worker. And to add insult to injury, the article talks about this woman, Sarah Kraft. She's the daughter of that auto worker we were talking about earlier. And unlike her dad, Sarah relies on a 401k for her retirement. She faces so much more uncertainty, especially, when the economy takes a downturn. It really highlights the difference between the two systems and what it means for people in the real world.
That's a really powerful point. Sarah's story really drives it home. It makes you think about all the other folks out there who are in the same boat, feeling stressed and unsure about what their retirement will actually look like.
Absolutely. And as the traditional way of working continues to change, with the rise of the gig economy and all that, it's a question we all need to be asking ourselves.
Right, exactly. We've got freelancers, gig workers, part-timers, all these people who often don't have access to any employer-sponsored retirement plan, whether it's a 401k or a pension. They're basically on their own to figure it all out, which can be super intimidating.
Yeah, it's a whole new set of challenges. And speaking of challenges, let's talk about Social Security. The program itself is facing some pretty serious headwinds right now.
Yeah, Social Security, it's not like it's constantly under attack these days. For folks who maybe aren't totally clear on how it all works,
Yeah.
can you give us like a quick rundown?
Sure. Social Security, it's a universal program. Everyone who works and pays into it, they're eligible to get benefits when they reach retirement age. It provides a lifetime stream of income, and it doesn't matter what your work history was or how much you earned. In 2024, the average monthly payout will be about $1,800.
$1,500 a month. That doesn't sound like a whole lot to live on, especially with how expensive everything is getting.
You're right. For a lot of seniors, it's simply not enough to cover even the basics, especially with healthcare costs and, inflation and all that.
And it feels like they're making it even harder for people to rely on Social Security. It seems like it's constantly being weakened.
Sadly, that's true. Social Security has become this really, really politicized issue. There have been all sorts of reforms, and they're often framed as a way to save money and be fiscally responsible. But a lot of times, they end up hurting the people who need it most. One of the biggest changes has been raising the retirement age. So now people have to work even longer before they can get their full benefits.
But what's been the impact of that on seniors?
Well, the article points out this really disturbing trend. Seniors are now the fastest growing demographic living in poverty. A lot of them are having to go back to work, often taking low-wage jobs just to, keep a roof over their heads and put food on the table.
It's a pretty dire situation.
It is.
So we've talked about, how retirement used to work, the shift from those pensions to 401ks, the rise of the gig economy, and all the challenges that Social Security is facing. It paints a pretty bleak picture of how we ended up with this whole retirement mess. But the question still remains, who or what is responsible? Who or what killed America's retirement?
Well, the article kind of acts like a detective. It looks at all the evidence, all the stuff we've been talking about, and it identifies three main culprits.
Okay, let's hear it. Who did it? Who are the main suspects in this retirement mystery?
All right, so first up, you've got corporate policies. Companies, they played a huge role in all of this. They started abandoning those pension plans in favor of those cheaper 401ks. Basically, they shifted the risk and the responsibility onto the shoulders of their workers.
I can see how that would be tempting from a business perspective.
hmm
But what about the government? Did they play a role in weakening the whole retirement safety net?
Oh, absolutely. Government reforms over the years, going all the way back to the Reagan era, have definitely contributed to the problem. There have been all these policies that have chipped away at Social Security, cutting benefits, making it tougher for people to actually rely on it for a stable source of income.
It seems like every other year there's talk about cutting Social Security even further or raising the retirement age again. Is that really the solution here?
It's a really complex issue, and there are no easy answers. You want to be fiscally responsible, sure, but you also need to make sure that seniors have a basic level of security. After all, they've paid into the system their entire working lives, right? They deserve a decent retirement.
They do. So we've got corporations, we've got the government. Who else on the list of suspects?
The third culprit might surprise you. It's not really a who, but more of a what. It's the the systemic inequities that are baked into the whole retirement system itself. The way 401ks are set up, it seems neutral on the surface, but they actually benefit higher earners way more than anyone else.
Hmm, interesting. How does that work? How does a seemingly neutral system end up favoring the wealthy?
Well, for starters, people with higher incomes, they're more likely to even have access to a 401k plan in the first place. They're also more likely to be able to contribute the maximum amount, and take advantage of any tax breaks that come with it. Lower income workers, they often struggle to save anything at all. And they tend to face higher fees, relatively speaking, which eats into their savings even more over time.
So it's not just about like personal choices or individual failures. It's about a system that's kind of rigged against certain groups of people from the get-go.
Exactly. The retirement crisis is this tangled web of problems with roots in our economic and social structures. Fixing it is going to take a lot more than just individual effort. It's going to require some serious systemic change. But that doesn't mean there's no hope. There are solutions out there.
Okay, I like that. I'm ready for some optimism after all that doom and gloom.
Yeah.
What are some things we can do to like turn this retirement ship around?
Well, one of the most important things is to make sure Social Security is strong and sustainable for the future. There's this proposal out there called the Social Security Enhancement Act. It would basically tax incomes above $250,000 to help boost those payouts and make sure the program doesn't run out of money.
So basically asking the wealthiest Americans to contribute a little bit more to support a program that benefits everyone.
That's the idea. And the potential impact could be huge. The article gives this example. If we just taxed the top 10 CEOs, the richest of the rich, it could bring in an extra $147 million each year for Social Security.
Wow, that's a lot of money. It makes you think, that this kind of reform could actually make a real difference. So that's one idea. What else can we do to, strengthen the safety net for retirement?
We could also take another look at pensions. We could put policies in place that require employers, even those in the gig economy, to offer pension plans to their workers. We can even look to other countries for inspiration. The UK, for example, they've got some really innovative programs that we could learn from.
That's a great point. It's always helpful to see what's working in other parts of the world.
Yeah.
Are there any other like out-of-the-box solutions being explored?
Absolutely. Some states are starting to get creative and experiment with new programs to help people save for retirement. For instance, some states are offering these auto-enrollment IRA programs. So workers are automatically enrolled in a retirement savings plan unless they specifically choose to opt out.
Interesting. It's encouraging to see some states thinking outside the box and trying new things. So what's the main takeaway here? What's the most important thing for our listeners to understand about all of this?
The key takeaway is this. The retirement crisis in America, it's not just about individuals making bad choices or not saving enough. It's about big systemic shifts, policy decisions, and actions by corporations that have eroded those traditional safety nets and put way too much of the burden on individual people.
It's a powerful reminder that we need to look beyond just personal responsibility. We need to address these bigger issues, these systemic problems if we're going to fix this thing. So where do we go from here? What can our listeners do not only to plan for their own retirement, but also to push for a system that actually works for everyone?
That's a great question, and it's one that we'll explore in more depth in the next part of our deep dive. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive on, the retirement situation in America. Honestly, I'm already feeling a little bit overwhelmed by all this.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot to take in. But remember, knowledge is power.
Yeah.
So instead of getting bogged down in all the challenges and stuff, why don't we shift gears a bit and focus on what you can actually do, like as an individual, to navigate this whole thing?
Okay, yeah, I like that. Let's move from overwhelmed to empowered. Where do we even start?
Well, I think the first step is to take a good, hard look at yourself. Like really assess your current financial situation.
So like stare at my bank account and try not to freak out.
Well, that's part of it, but it's also about figuring out what your goals are, financially speaking. Like how much risk are you comfortable with? What's your timeline looking like?
That makes sense. Retirement planning isn't exactly like one size fits all, right?
Not at all. What works for a 25-year-old freelancer who's, hustling in the gig economy, it's going to be totally different from what works for someone who's, say, 50 and has a solid 401k already.
So how do you even begin to figure all that out? It seems, I don't know, kind of daunting.
It can be, but the good news is there are resources out there to help you. Financial advisors, they can offer some personalized guidance, create a plan that's, tailored to your specific needs. And there are tons of online tools and calculators that can help you estimate, how much you'll need and track your progress and stuff.
Okay, so let's say I've done that. I've kind of assessed where I'm at, financially. I have some sense of my goals and all that. What's the next step?
This might sound obvious, but it's super important. Start saving as early as possible, even if it's just a little bit here and there.
Ah, the magic of compound interest, right?
Exactly. Time is your best friend when it comes to saving for retirement. The sooner you start, the more time that money has to, grow and multiply. Think of it like planting a seed. Give it enough time and it'll blossom into a mighty oak tree.
Okay, I get it. But what if I'm like barely making ends meet right now? How am I supposed to save anything when I'm, living paycheck to paycheck?
I hear you. That's a real struggle for a lot of people. But even small, consistent contributions, they can make a big difference over time. Think about it this way. If you save just $5 a day, that's almost 2 grand a year.
Yeah, you're right. That's more than I thought. I guess every little bit does help.
It really does. Look for ways to cut back on things you don't really need, even if it's just a few bucks here and there. Pack your lunch instead of eating out.
Yeah.
Maybe cancel that streaming subscription you never use. Little things like that can add up.
Okay, yeah, I could definitely try that. So saving early and consistently, that's key. But what about investing? That whole world just seems like so mysterious.
It doesn't have to be. The key is to learn the basics,
Yeah.
figure out how it all works, and then pick a strategy that makes sense for you, based on your risk tolerance and how long you have until retirement.
I've heard of things like index funds and target date funds. Are those good options for someone who's just starting out?
They can be, yeah. Index funds, they're a pretty low-cost way to, passively track the performance of the stock market. Think of it like buying a little piece of the entire market. And target date funds, those are designed to, automatically adjust as you get closer to retirement. They become more conservative over time, so you're not taking on as much risk as you get older.
So it's like having an autopilot for your investments.
Exactly. It takes some of the stress and guesswork out of it. But no matter what strategy you choose, diversification is super important. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. Spread your investments across different things like stocks, bonds, real estate, that kind of stuff.
Makes sense. Don't bet everything on one company or one part of the economy. So we've talked about saving early, investing wisely, maybe getting some help from a professional.
Yeah.
Any other tips for building a solid retirement plan?
Definitely. Don't underestimate the power of side hustles, generating some extra income, whether it's through, freelancing or finding creative ways to leverage your skills and make some extra cash.
It's funny, we were just talking about how the gig economy is this big challenge for retirement, but it could actually be an opportunity, right? A way to supplement your income and boost your savings.
Exactly. Turn that challenge into an asset. And finally, and this is super important, be an advocate for yourself and for systemic change. Support policies that make Social Security stronger, that promote retirement security for everyone.
Right. It's not just about taking personal responsibility. It's about pushing for a system that's fair and sustainable for everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So, even though the current situation might seem kind of bleak, there are definitely things you can do to take control and build a more secure future for yourself. It's about being informed, being proactive, and using the resources that are out there.
I'm feeling a little more optimistic now. It's not all doom and gloom if we take action, right? Speaking of resources, does that article we've been talking about, does it offer any specific advice or tools for people?
It does, yeah. It's got links to organizations that offer free financial guidance, and resources. It also gives some tips on how to contact your elected officials and advocate for change.
Excellent. Listeners, be sure to check out the full article. It's got some really helpful stuff in there. And remember, even small steps can make a big difference in the long run when it comes to retirement planning.
Absolutely. Don't let the challenges of the current system get you down. You have the power to create a secure and fulfilling retirement for yourself. Every step you take today brings you closer to that goal.
Great advice. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We talked about the history of retirement in America, the crisis we're facing now, and some potential solutions, both on a personal level and on a systemic level. What would you say is the most important thing for our listeners to take away from all of this?
I think the most important thing is to remember that the retirement crisis, it's complicated. There aren't any easy answers. But if you understand how we got here, what the challenges are, and what solutions are out there, you can make good decisions and take control of your own financial future.
Knowledge is power. Right. And speaking of knowledge, I think we've all had a lot to digest today. It's probably a good time to take a little break and let it all sink in. When we come back, we'll wrap things up with some final thoughts and a call to action for our listeners. And we're back, folks. So we've really dug into this whole retirement thing in America, haven't we? We've gone from those like cushy pensions of the past to, the whole 401k world, and we even talked about how tough it is for folks in the gig economy these days.
It's been quite the journey, for sure. And, even though we've uncovered some pretty tough realities, I think we've also managed to highlight some paths forward.
Yeah, I think so too. We've talked about taking responsibility for our own finances, like saving, investing, making a plan, all that good stuff. But I really want to stress that individual action, it's just not enough. This is a systemic issue, right? It needs a bigger solution.
You're absolutely right. It's like trying to bail out a sinking boat with a teaspoon. You might make a little bit of progress,
Yeah.
but you're not going to fix the problem until you plug the hole in the hole. We need some serious changes, like structural reforms, policy changes. We got to start prioritizing retirement security as a nation.
That's a great way to put it. So besides, managing their own money, what can our listeners do to be a part of the solution here? How do they help, plug those holes, so to speak?
One of the best things you can do is become an advocate. Speak up. Talk to your elected officials. Let them know that retirement security, it matters to you. Support organizations that are fighting for policies that strengthen Social Security, that promote pensions, that create a more equitable system, one that works for everyone, not just a select few.
It's about getting people talking,
Yeah.
right? Raising awareness, demanding change. I know it can feel kind of overwhelming, but our voices together, they can make a difference.
Absolutely. And remember, this isn't just about, people who are close to retirement age. The choices we make now, they'll affect, the future of retirement for generations to come. It's about creating a world where everyone has the chance to retire with dignity and security.
That's what we all want, right? So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a challenge. Don't just, let all this information sit there. Talk about it. Share what you've learned with your friends, your family, your coworkers. Start those conversations. Ask those tough questions, and challenge the assumptions we often make about retirement.
Yeah, let's stop treating this like it's some taboo subject.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it openly, honestly, recognize how important it is, not just for individuals, but for society as a whole.
Exactly. Retirement, it shouldn't be this scary mystery or a gamble. It should be a time to rest, to enjoy financial security, and to finally have the freedom to pursue those passions and dreams and things we've put off for so long.
Well said. And building that future, it starts with each one of us.
Well, thanks for joining us on this exploration of Verica's retirement system. We hope we've gotten you thinking, maybe even inspired you to push for some change. Until next time, keep diving deep and keep questioning everything.